Hi, welcome to Bari Nation, where we support the bariatric community with humor, humility, and honesty.
You've just tuned into a podcast that welcomes you into a community, a resource center, and a safe place that powers your journey towards personal wellness.
Our goal is you leave us today feeling hopeful, inspired, and ready to live your best bariatric life.
All right, Bari Nation, we are joined today by basically our lifelong bariatric friend, advocate, patient extraordinaire, Maddie.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
It has been so long since we have had you on the podcast, and even it's been a hot minute since we've just connected with you. And we know your life has changed in completely unexpected and exciting ways. And today we wanted to ask you something really personal about your recent marriage. So we are celebrating Pride Month this month, and we really celebrate Pride every day in Bari Nation. We work really hard to make sure that we are inclusive and welcoming to everyone, regardless of their sexual orientation and gender. And we know that you just got married. We know that your sexuality has changed from when we first met you to now. And the question that we are most excited to ask you about today is, how did you know, or how did you find the courage to explore a different way of living?
I had bariatric surgery 7 years ago. And I always say that that's kind of like the slingshot catapult that just like changed my whole life in good ways and some really rough ways. And everything was going good. And I started to get some GI symptoms, and I started to get malnourished in February of 22. And by February of 23, I had lost 50 pounds unintentionally. And I'll never forget sitting in my bed. And I was sitting there thinking, like, my life could maybe be different if I took like the man out of it. And I was sitting, and for the first time in my life, I never sat down and thought what I wanted my life to look like from the age of 45 to 70. I just always thought, I'm going to be a mom, whatever. And I envisioned myself sitting in a rocking chair at 60 years old, and next to me was a woman. And I remember thinking, I've never had that thought in my mind. And I usually would just like toss it out, whatever. And I thought on it. And I was like, I'll never forget one of my good friends, Lou. Most people know Lou. She's the best. She said, if you never give it a try, you'll never know. If you hate going on one date with a girl, don't go again. And I was like, simple as that. So I changed my preferences on dating apps. I'd kind of been on and off of them. I think I was just excited and just like, this could be a possibility, or this could be terrible. I'm not sure, but I'm going to give it a try. Like, what is the worst thing that could come from it? And lo and behold, the first girl that I went on a date with is now my wife. Her name is Angelina. And it's funny, she always says, that doesn't usually happen like that. Like, I don't want you to think that always happens. But I think that because I was going through such bad complications, not from bariatric surgery, from colitis that they were having a hard time figuring out, I really think that is what made me take a real hard look at, what do I want if I live through this? If I make it to next year, what would I like? And I thought, I know that I've always just thought that I'm attracted to men because I dated men. And I remember, though, ever since I was little, it just being an expected thing for me to be attracted to men. I was 4 years old at a football game. I've always loved makeup, and I was putting on lipstick, and my mom's friend said to me, the boys are going to love that. They're going to think you look so pretty. And I remember getting excited about that. Like, oh yeah, that is so fun. And I thought that men were attractive. So I thought that was just what was supposed to be. It's what's accepted, and never really gave a thought to what would happen if I dated a woman until it was April of 2023.
I think that's the key, is just like not necessarily being afraid of the outcome, but kind of welcoming the diverse outcome to your previous encounters. I think there's something really beautiful and encouraging to a lot of us.
When we're growing up, or when we're around our friends and family, or just in society, right? Things are said to us. And oftentimes we just take them as the truth, because at that younger age, you don't understand that there is a different reality that really could be true for you. But to not only take the time to really think about what you wanted your life to look like can be challenging. But then when your response to yourself was something that you had never imagined, did you believe it at first? Or was it a weird experience? Yeah.
I feel like until I actually met Angelina in person for the first time, it felt like I was living somebody else's life. Like I was like, because I really hadn't told my mom yet. I had only told a couple of my close friends, and I hadn't told my mom, I hadn't told my dad. So I was just like on edge a little bit about it. But once I made up my mind that was something that I was going to explore, I did not let anyone stop me. And I didn't let even like the fear of, I had a fear of telling my mom and my dad, mostly my dad, because I just didn't know what he would think. And he's the most open-minded person I've ever met, ever. And so I don't know why I was afraid, but those were probably the things that I was most scared about. I was honestly excited. And I was like, how did I never think of this before? Like, how did I never explore this? Like, even before our first date, I was thinking like, how did I never even ever think to give it a chance, And looking back, I'm like, I think I've only never understood what love is until now. And until knowing that really love is love. Like, it doesn't matter. I know that's just like repeating that, but it's like I get it in my soul now what it means.
I think where I relate to that, I remember I came out before my bariatric surgery. It was a part of it led me, I think, to having bariatric surgery. I just allowed myself to live fully, and I went on a date with a woman, and I remember thinking, okay, well, that person was not for me. However, that was a lot more fun than any of my dates with a man. I mean, I've had some pretty fun dates with men too. I'm not going to lie, but I was like, that was just easy, right? And then you think like, oh, afterwards you're kind of unpacking, what happened. And you're like, oh, why did I deny myself this fun or this like easiness for so long?
Even visiting Portland and visiting all the different places that I was another huge reason why I was like, oh my gosh, well, I have some, friends that are also in the LGBTQ community. And, it was just a little bit more comforting, but I truly think I saw how other people were living and thought, why can't I do that? Like, why couldn't I try that? And it just so happened to work out. But I'm like, I don't want everyone to think it's like that easy, because it sounds easy. But when you do meet someone that you click with, you just know. And it really is, regardless of the gender or the sexuality, for me.
It's what we say all the time in Bari Nation, that this bariatric journey really comes down to trust. It takes a lot of bravery and courage to really tap in and pay attention to what your true self is saying, and then believe it, right? Believe it, especially when the truth that's coming back to you is such a departure from what you have always thought would bring you happiness and joy and fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
So, Maddie, for anybody who's listening or watching this podcast, and maybe they're wondering that same question too, how did you get to that place where you just said, I'm going to trust myself this one time?
That definitely started when I had bariatric surgery, but then like even more so the past year. And I think that I have always thought in my head, nobody else has walked in my shoes and nobody else has to. So nobody can judge how I walk in these shoes. And I just, that always like sits with me. And I think about that every time that I'm just like, well, maybe I shouldn't. And then I'm like, no, like I'm gonna do it.
But what that does is it helps you drop the baggage of other people, because it's like, this is my life, this is my path, this is the direction that I'm going to go. And these are the shoes that I'm walking in. Nobody else has to walk in them.
Yeah.
There is so much pressure. I think we all feel so much pressure to, be a role model or somebody to look up to, where it's like, oh, somebody's going to emulate or follow. But that's kind of that stigma that we were talking about earlier, right? Like when we say little things like, oh, the boys are going to love that, or the girls are going to think that you're so handsome, right? When we put those qualifiers on those statements, it does stick in our brain. And then we just assume that role or that identity or that belief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you don't have to.
No. And I think that's another thing with just the whole, people not wanting to be on board with like my sexuality. I'm like, that's not my problem. Like, that's their problem. I'm living a good, honest, loving life. And anybody else who just doesn't agree with it, I'm like, they can just kick rocks if they don't like it,
It's like our bariatric surgeries. I mean, it's all full circle, right? Like, I've had family members come to me and honestly berate me before having my surgery. Okay, bye. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. And that causes rifts in my family, but it's like, that's not on me to carry what you are giving me. Like, I don't need to carry that. And it's the same with our sexuality, with who we choose to have as partners. I've had conversations again with family members where, and say, oh yeah, I'm dating, this girl, whatever. And they're like, oh, I could just never. And I'm like, that's cool. I'm not asking you to, I'm doing it. Like, it's like, what an odd thing to say out loud. But I think there's so much like power in that, of just like, you do not walk in my shoes. I don't walk in yours. Let's just live our best lives, and I will support you living your best life if you support me living mine, and just leaving it at that.
We've known you for a long time now, Maddie. I mean, we just have, and we have seen so many different versions of you, but never in the 4.5 years that we've known each other have you genuinely appeared and spoken so, I don't know, deeply, so happily, so joyfully. I mean, there's just this ease that exists in your presence now that never seemed to exist before. And you have been through hell and back to get here. But it's just so, I guess, inspiring or encouraging to see you just so you.
That means
makes
so
sense.
much. Yes, that does mean so much. And I know what you mean, because I have felt it recently in the past like 3-4 months, of just like, this is Maddie, but like with a new spin.
All right, my friends, we are going to continue this conversation with Maddie in the bonus episode of this podcast. So if you are a Bari Nation community member, or if you are a Patreon supporter, you are going to keep hearing this amazing conversation with Maddie. We're going to deep dive more into her sexuality and how she arrived, really built this new life that she has, and talk about just how her bariatric journey has really inspired her to tap into the life that she is living today. So if you'd like to keep listening, if you want to keep the conversation going, join us in the community or support us on Patreon. Maddie, what is the one thing that you're hoping people are leaving this conversation with today?
This has nothing to do with sexuality, but I hope that you open your mind to trying something new. That's all. Something new, whether it's a new hobby, a new style, a new dating preference, whatever it is, just keep an open mind and try something different.
Maddie, you are absolutely amazing. You are a gem. You are one of our favorite humans on the planet. Thank you so much for being brave and sharing your story with us. We love and appreciate you.
I love you all, and thank you so much for having me.
That wraps up another empowering episode of the Bari Nation podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, keep the conversation going by joining the Bari Nation membership community, where you can attend live support events, access on-demand resources, and find a caring community.
Join us at barination.mn.co. If you found this podcast valuable, help us produce it by becoming a $5 monthly supporter at BariNationPodcast.com.
And just remember, at the end of the day, you've got this, we've got you, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.